Now we want to take examples on trigonometric ratios, or let's say trigonometrical ratios, between the angles of 0 degrees and 360 degrees. And we'll be applying the principle of saut quadrant, where sine, or let's say sine theta, is opposite over hypotenuse, cos theta is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan theta is opposite over adjacent. So this is important. And in our last lesson, we derived that all sine, cosine, and tangent are positive in the first quadrant. Only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Only cos is positive in the third quadrant, and only tangent is positive in the fourth quadrant. So now let's simplify this further. So therefore, we are saying something like, let's follow the pattern we used. Sine theta is equals to positive sine theta. Cos theta is also positive cos theta. And tan theta is equals to positive tan theta. And in this case, only sine is positive. So we are saying that if we have the sine of a number, it will be the sine of that relatively acute number. So this will be 180 minus theta. Remember that this is, will give the angle, the relative acute angle in second quadrant is 180 minus theta, and it is positive. Now if you have cos theta, it will be the cosine of the relative acute angle, and here it is negative. Similarly, tan theta will be the tangent of the relative acute angle, but this time negative, because only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Similarly, for the third quadrant, we have cosine, or let's start with sine. Sine theta is equals to sine, the relative acute angle in the third quadrant is theta minus 180, and only cos is positive in this case, so this is negative, and cos theta is positive because it's positive in third quadrant, the acute angle, and tan theta will be the tan of the relative acute angle, theta minus 180, and is negative in the third quadrant. And finally, in the fourth quadrant, sine theta is equals to sine, the relative acute angle of this is 360 minus theta, and it is negative because only tan is positive in the fourth quadrant. Similarly, cos theta will be cos into 360 minus theta, and this is negative, and tan theta will be positive tan 360 minus theta. Now I want you to understand that this works only for positive angles. For what? For positive angles. So let's take some examples, shall we, to establish understanding. So we'll be taking this along everywhere we go, so we can just copy it so that we can have easy access to it when the time comes. Now we copy. So let's take our example number 1. We're asked to evaluate the equivalent of the following angles. Now we are not using tables, yes, we just want to evaluate the equivalent. So let's begin. We're given that theta is equals to 30 degrees. Now 30 degrees is in which quadrant? 30 degrees is greater than 0 but less than 90 degrees. Therefore 30 degrees is in the first quadrant, and in the first quadrant we have this, where sine theta in this case is 30 degrees. 30 degrees is equals to positive sine 30 degrees, and sine cos 30 degrees, because we're in the first quadrant, is also equals to positive cos 30 degrees, and tan 30 degrees is equals to positive tan 30 degrees. Now you can use tables, you can use your calculator. There are a calculator there. Let's just evaluate the values of this. So sine 30 degrees is equals to 0.5, cos 30 degrees is equals to 0.8660, and tan 30 degrees is equals to 0.5774. all right, that's that for question 1. Let's take question 2. We have angles theta to be equals to 120 degrees. Well, 120 degrees is in which quadrant? You can say 120 degrees is greater than 90 degrees and it is less than 180 degrees. So we can say that this is in the second quadrant and this 30 degrees is in the first quadrant. So in the first quadrant all is positive, in the second quadrant only sine is positive. So let's go back and make reference to the second quadrant. So we have that all the sine is positive and the acute angle is 180 minus theta. 180 minus theta, 180 minus theta. And let's apply this to that. So therefore sine 120 degrees will be equals to sine 180 minus theta. That's 180 minus 120 degrees. That's the relative acute angle. And it is positive because in the second quadrant only sine is positive. So therefore we will have this to give us sine positive sine 60. And positive sine 60, it's simply 0.8660. Let's move on to cos 120 degrees. Cos 120 degrees is also cos 180 minus theta. And theta is 120 degrees, so this will give us 120 degrees. Now in the second quadrant only sine is positive, therefore cos is negative. And this will give us minus cos 60 degrees. And this will give us minus 0.5. Moving on, tan 120 degrees. Tan 120 degrees in the second quadrant using the relative acute formula. So this will be 0 times 180 minus theta. Theta in this case is also 120 degrees. So we'll have this to give us is negative minus tan 60 degrees. Minus tan 60 degrees in our calculator will simply give us minus 1.7321. This we have learned for the second quadrant. Moving on, let us evaluate the third quadrant. Let's use the angle 260 degrees. 260 degrees is greater than 180 degrees and it is less than 270 degrees. So therefore it is in the third quadrant. And if you recall vividly well, all students take coffee, and in the third quadrant only tan is positive. Only tan is positive. Now let's make reference to what we have here. All students take, oh, there is a mistake here. Yeah, all students take coffee. I sincerely apologize for that. But yeah, let's make amendments to this. So this will be cos is negative, tan is positive. And here our cos is positive and our tan is negative. So yes, this is the correct one. All students take coffee. And let's move on. You can make that amendment in your notes. Now the acute angle formula or relative acute angle formula in the third quadrant is theta minus 180 degrees. So therefore we are saying that sine 260 degrees is positive. No, only tan is positive in the third quadrant, so sine is negative. So this will be sine theta minus 180. The theta in this case is 260. 260 minus 180. And 260 minus 180 is simply 80 degrees. So this will give us minus sine 80 degrees. And if we evaluate this, sine 80 is minus 0.9848. Cos 260 degrees now. Cos 260 degrees will give us cos of theta, that's 260 degrees minus 180. Cosine in the third quadrant is negative, and this will give us minus cos 80 degrees. Using our calculator to evaluate this, we'll have this to give us minus 0.1737. Let's proceed to tan 260 degrees. Tan 260 degrees in this case is 260 minus 180 degrees. Now in the third quadrant, only tan is positive, so this will give us positive tan 80 degrees. So using our calculator, moving on, we will have it to give us positive 5.6713. This is for the third quadrant. Now let us finalize now for the fourth quadrant. The question in this case will be, let's use 300 degrees. Now in the fourth quadrant, we can see now this is the fourth quadrant because 300 degrees is greater than 270 degrees, which is less than 360 degrees, which is the fourth quadrant. And in the fourth quadrant only, we can see only cosine is positive. Now the question is, what is the acute angle formula for the fourth quadrant? Let's take a look at this, make a reference to this. We have this to give us 360 minus theta, 360 minus theta, 360 minus theta. So let's apply these formulas to evaluate cosine of 300 degrees. So let's begin with sine. Sine 300 degrees will be minus sine 300, because we are using 360 minus theta. So this will give us minus sine 360 minus theta. Now our theta in this case is 300, and this is minus sine 60 degrees. Sine in the fourth quadrant is negative, minus sine 60 degrees, which would give us minus 0.8660. Moving on, let's evaluate cosine 300 degrees. So cosine 300 degrees is cosine of 360 minus 300, because we're in the fourth quadrant. Cosine is positive, and this will give us positive cos 60 degrees, which is positive 0.5. And finally, tan 300 degrees. Tan 300 degrees is negative tan 360 minus 300. Is negative because only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. So this means we have negative tan 60 degrees, and tan 60 degrees will give us negative 1.7321. Now we have seen how to apply this in the four quadrants. Okay, we have seen it in the first quadrant, we have seen this in the second quadrant where only sine is positive, and the third quadrant where only tan is positive, and in the fourth quadrant where only cosine is positive. And all we just applied was this: all students take coffee.